Good morning, Kathy.
Good morning, Hilda. You're on the wrong meeting.
You have the recording.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Recording has begun for the State Aviation Board. I would remind all the participants that to please mute your phones unless you've been recognized by the chair. Madam Chair, would you like me to call roll call for the record once you have convened this meeting?
Okay, this is a calling to order the Oregon Aviation Board meeting for July. And if you'll go ahead and do a roll call, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Meeker,
Here.
Vice Chair Granado,
Here.
Mark Peters,
Here.
Hilda Pareo,
Here.
Doug Ferguson, Doug, you have to unmute. I'll come back to him. John Barslew.
Here.
And I do see Doug identified. Hopefully you can find the unmute button. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, with that, let me go ahead and welcome everybody to this month's meeting of the Oregon Aviation Board. We just got recently out of executive session where we had a chance to discuss where we are on the obstacle removal and the aviation easements concerning various airports around the state, and also a debrief of the recent court ruling on the master plan for Aurora. And so now with the open session, I would like to go ahead and see if we can drive into the consent agenda so we can get to the public comment, as I know we have folks waiting. So today's consent agenda consists of simply the minutes from the June 2nd meeting, or the June 3rd meeting, excuse me, of the Oregon Aviation Board. Does any board member have any requests to amend or change the meeting minutes as they stand? With that, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as it is?
So moved. This is Mark.
I have a motion by Mark. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by John. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as it is, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing that, the consent agenda is passed. With that, Kathy, and let me hand it over to you for a public comment period.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to send courtesy to Senator Betsy Johnson to speak with the board today. Senator Johnson.
Thank you very much. I would respectfully defer. I appreciate the courtesy, but I think Ms. Kellington might be able to set the stage for some of this public comment at a broader level than my testimony. So may I would like to retain the 2 minutes, but ask that Ms. Kellington go first.
You bet, Senator. Appreciate you being here, by the way.
Madam Chair, I'd like to extend courtesy to Mayor Julie Fitzgerald from the city of Wilsonville.
You bet.
Thank you. Good day, Chair Meeker, Director Stansbury, members of the Oregon Aviation Board, and Senator Johnson. I'm Julie Fitzgerald, Mayor of the city of Wilsonville. I'm here to present to you the city of Wilsonville's primary concerns regarding the Aurora State Airport master planning process. We're still awaiting reply to our letter of June 14th, outlining our concerns on how the PAC has been composed. We would like to be assured that the public and local governments can have a transparent and equitable role in that committee so that we can be heard and well represented. The city is concerned that the Oregon Department of Aviation has repeatedly acted in a biased manner, favoring vested financial interests over important public community interests. For example, an attorney who claimed to represent all of the airport businesses was allowed to lobby the Aviation Board by presenting a lengthy argument about the master plan process at the Aviation Board meeting last month. We didn't see that any other members of the public received the same treatment. We hope that the proposed master plan process will not be done in a way that perpetuates the 10-year-long controversy over the Aurora State Airport. I'm hopeful that with the Court of Appeals finding of multiple violations of Oregon public process and land use laws as contended by the city over the last master plan, that the department's leadership will pursue a fair and transparent path from here forward. We have lost confidence that we will see a master planning process that is unbiased, and we are now seeking federal intervention by the funders. We look to the department leadership to please demonstrate their willingness to hear from local communities by meeting with them to discuss in a rational manner our concerns and how to best resolve them in a way that meets Oregon public process and land use laws. So far, the largest public event to discuss the Aurora State Airport master planning situation was held by the City of Wilsonville City Council in November 2019. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Mayor, and it's great to have you here. And I think the board and the department as well is very committed to following the public use process. So once again, thank you for being here, and we'll have much more public engagement as we go forward.
Wonderful, thank you.
Kathy, do we have any other elected members here that we need to bring forward?
None other on my list. I would ask at this time if there are any elected officials on this call. If you please identify yourself if you would like to speak at this time. Seeing none, and please.
Kathy, I think we've got somebody, Joanne
Yes.
Linville.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. City Council?
Yes.
Thank
you.
Councilor Linville.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. And I wanted to say thank you as well to Madam Chair and board members for the opportunity to speak to the board today. I'm Joanne Linville. I am a city councilor for the city of Wilsonville. And my comments today will specifically relate to the Aurora State Airport master plan process. I need to also let you know that I am a resident of Charbonneau, although I am not speaking on behalf of the community of Charbonneau. I know that the board is well aware of the FAA guidance on airport master plans and the requirement to prepare and present a plan to the public that adequately addresses all relevant issues and satisfies local, state, and federal regulations. And specifically, as Mayor Fitzgerald has addressed, that speaks to all of the Oregon land use planning goals, and specifically goal number 1. And I wanted to advocate on behalf of the citizens that I represent on the city council, which are the entire city of Wilsonville, and advocate for a fair and open process in the planning, and one that that equitably allows our citizens to address issues with the board and in the planning process to address issues of concern that have to do with environmental issues as well as safety. And so I thank you very much and look forward to ongoing dialogue with the board and involvement in the planning process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Linville.
Thank you, Councilor. Is there any other person here who is elected official who would like to address the board before I go to the list that I have? Madam Chair, I would just call the names in the order in which people identified themselves this morning. So it's in no particular order, unless you have a preference of who to lead off. But what I have first is Kate Clark from Helicopter Association International. So Mr. Clark, if you would unmute, you have 2 minutes to address the board.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time today and for letting me speak. I'm Kate Clark, Vice President of Government Affairs for Helicopter Association International. HAI is a professional trade association for the international helicopter industry and represents more than 1,100 global companies and over 16,000 industry professionals in more than 65 countries. We have over 500 members in Oregon. I appreciate the opportunity to provide comment today. We feel that there's a deep interconnection between the helicopter companies at Aurora with not only each other, but the entire nation for firefighting, saving lives, keeping the power on, and more. Although these are helicopter operators, all of them directly or indirectly use fixed-wing aircraft in the performance and operation of their businesses. We respectfully request the Oregon Department of Aviation to stand behind these companies and support aviation within the state, as their ability to operate and thrive affects not only the state of Oregon, but citizens all across the nation. HII asks ODA to defend the aviation community, especially when it comes to fighting bad judicially created case laws that are clearly adversarial to aviation. It is imperative ODA fights this issue at the Oregon Supreme Court, and HII will participate in the fight by filing an amicus brief when the time comes to support ODA in that fight. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you. The next on my list is Phil Durner with NBAA.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the chance to speak. My name is Phil Durner. I'm the Western Regional Representative for the National Business Aviation Association. We represent over 10,000 businesses across the United States, over 100 in Oregon, among them Fortune 100 companies, all of whom rely on airports and business aviation. We're very concerned about anything that stands to be a threat to expansion of projects at airports that are vital for safety. More than 80% of the airports in the United States have little or no airline service. And it's very important that these airports, as vital as trucks on a highway, be looked at as important infrastructure that empower business and commerce, especially when these projects relate to safety. NBA very much hopes that the ODA will fight this case law to the Supreme Court to help airports like Aurora Airport, which is an amazing example of an airport that provides access for its community. These type of decisions will affect whether businesses remain or whether new business entrants are drawn to the area. We think that this is vital for the commerce of the state, and we hope that the ODA does fight this to the Supreme Court, and NBA will be there along the way. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Durner.
Thank you. The next one on my list is Josh Prusik from AOPA.
Good morning, and thank you for letting me speak at your advisory board meeting. My name is Josh Prusik, and I am the Northwest Mountain Regional Manager for the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. AOPA has over 300,000 members nationwide and nearly 5,000 members in Oregon, and almost 300 of those members have identified the Aurora State Airport as their home airport. And in fact, as a West Lynn resident, it's been my home airport for nearly 25 years. Recently, a number of our members have reached out asking how the June ruling by the Oregon Court of Appeals concerning the Aurora State Airport Master Plan may impact the airport and other public use airports across the state. In response, we are urging the Oregon State Aviation Board to carefully consider the impacts this ruling has, not only on the safety of operations at the Aurora State Airport, but specifically on other master plan updates at all other public use airports throughout the state. AOPA believes that it's critical for the Oregon State Aviation Board to pursue all options, legal and otherwise, regarding this ruling to preserve the development rights at public use airports across the state, and specifically at the Aurora State Airport. Additionally, as always, AOPA also supports the state's current efforts to push for enhancements at airports such as Aurora State that will allow for an increased margin of safety for the design category of aircraft that are already based on the field and continue to use the airport today. We believe this is the right thing to do, not only for the airport community, but also for the communities that immediately surround the airport. And if I or AOPA can be a resource throughout this effort, we would welcome that opportunity. Thank you for your consideration, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak at your meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Prusik, and thank you for your offer of help.
Thank you. Next up, I have Lily Johnson from EAA.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to make comments this morning. My name is Lily Johnson. I'm the Government Advocacy Specialist at the Experimental Aircraft Association in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So our primary interest is in home-built aircraft, but we also have a strong interest in protecting the rights of the airports where our nearly 240,000 members fly. Since the Aurora Airport is the home of Vans Aircraft, the largest kit airplane company in the world, we are aware of the controversy that is going on there, and specifically about whether the state airport can proceed with its FAA-approved master plan safety improvements. We understand that there's a court decision that if left unchallenged, it could potentially make many of Oregon's rural airports harder to maintain and improve. All of your state's airports are very important to our members, and our members come from all over the country, every state, and we recognize that this issue is not limited to the state of Oregon. We at EAA encourage you to take up this fight and protect the rights of the state's airports. If we can do anything to help in that effort, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, and I appreciate your offer's help as well.
Thank you. Next up, I have Becky Breckenridge from OPA.
Good morning, Chair Meeker. Oregon Pilots Association has existed since 1936 and serves to advocate general aviation in the state of Oregon. Oregon Pilots Association is requesting that the Oregon Department of Aviation Board work with the Aurora Airport team in asking for a Supreme Court review to overturn the court appeals decision that ignores the airport protection rule OAR 66001200653N. This rule has allowed existing airports to use EFU land to improve airports to runway safety, as long as the improvements do not permit service to a larger class of airplane that already are based at that airport. Without this rule, the restrictions are numerous and excessively expensive in obtaining exceptions to state planning goals. Along with other aviation organizations in Oregon, Oregon Pilots Association is in favor of reversing the Court of Appeals decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty, and always great to see you. Or Becky, excuse me.
Thank you.
Next up, I have JL Wilson from OWAMA.
Good morning, Chair Meeker and members of the Aviation Board. For the record, I'm J.L. Wilson. This morning, I'm representing the Oregon Airport Management Association. It was our great pleasure to work alongside the agency this session to pass the aviation fuel sunset removal and other provisions. We do consider ourselves strong partners with the agency. The board has authorized me this morning to make this statement, and that is we are asking that the Aviation Board direct the ODA to join in seeking Supreme Court review of the recent appeals court ruling. We do believe it's very important for the ODA and the state to convey its interest in this particular matter. And the really reason that I'll focus on today is that the appeals court decision does appear to cut the legs out from the airport planning rule for any airport located outside of a UGB or adjacent to EFU, and render that rule essentially meaningless. And that obviously has implications for airports far beyond Aurora State Airport. In fact, a number of our airports have used this rule and will be impacted by the appeals court decision. So we are asking that the ODA convey its interest in this matter and seek judicial review by the Supreme Court due to its impacts to airports across the state. Thank you.
Thank you, JL, and thanks, by the way, to everybody out there who helped us with the getting the sunset removed. That great work, and we look forward to moving forward on this project as well.
Thank you. Next up, I have Joe Smith from Oravi.
Members of the board, good morning. I am Joe Smith. My interest in aviation began as chief of staff to an Oregon congressman and as a charter member of the Congressional Flying Club 56 years ago. It continued when I moved to Pendleton and became assistant city attorney for the city of Pendleton and later county counsel to the Commission of Umatilla County. And I served as president of the Oregon Pilots Association, a member of the board for many years, and I was a member of this board for more than 10 years, interspersed briefly by a stint as a member of the Oregon legislature. And I am representing today the board of Oregon Aviation Industries, which is comprised of business interests, large and small, throughout Oregon. I should mention, while I was on the board, I participated in the adoption of the current master plan and attended the meetings, the public meetings, and I would like to say that the representations of the enemies of Aurora that there was not fair opportunity to participate is less than accurate. I am using that rather than a stronger word. The stated mission of the Department of Aviation is to promote the growth and economic development of airports and their communities. The board must ask for review of this decision because the decision is antithetical to that mission, and it is wrong on both the facts and on the law. It would be bad if it affected only Aurora. Aurora is not just important to businesses and tenants on the airport. Its availability and health is key to the planning and locating of businesses out into the surrounding area. But it is especially bad because its broad language can apply to public use airports throughout the state, 58 of which, by the way, I have been in and out of as a pilot. The health of airports like Baker, LeGrand, Bend, Redmond, Klamath Falls, Astoria, Grants Pass, Gold Beach, on and on, are not just important now. The coming of hybrid and all-electric powered aircraft will make the potential economic viability of rural air service explode as fuel costs drop to 20 or even 10% of what they are now. Allowing this ruling to go unchallenged would be a huge mistake. Again, it is wrong on the facts and wrong on the law. Please insist that the Department of Aviation join wholeheartedly in the effort to overturn this flawed decision. Thanks for the opportunity to participate.
Thanks, Joe. And we always appreciate when you bring your 5 decades worth of aviation experience to the board. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, I have Ted Millar.
My name is Ted Millar, and I'm one of the major property owners on the Aurora State Airport. As stated, ODA's stated mission is to promote and protect Oregon airports. Unlike airports that are wholly owned by the state or by ports, Aurora Airport is a true private-public partnership, and the private property owners on the airport own 57% of the land footprint of the Aurora Airport P-zone. In reliance on the 1976 master plan and subsequent updates, the FAA has invested millions of dollars on the runway, taxiway, and a control tower installation. Private enterprise has invested over $250 million in structures and improvements for the 2020 Marion County tax records. Unlike airports that are wholly owned by the state or ports, all of the private property site improvements such as ramps, taxi lanes, utilities, fire lines, sewer and water lines, security fencing, security gates, and all those things are paid for by the private enterprise, not the state or the FAA. Private enterprise pays over $1,850,000 on the Aurora Airport into the property tax system, supporting schools, libraries, and the fire district. Private enterprise pays ODA thousands of dollars each year in runway access fees and in fuel taxes. There are also over 1,350 living wage jobs on the airport, paying thousands of dollars in income taxes and by spending those dollars in the surrounding communities. ODA caused this problem by opening the 2012 master plan update to appeal, and they need to fix it. Respectfully submitted, Ted Millar.
Thank you, Ted.
Madam Chair, next up, I have Neil White from OPA.
Yes, Madam Chair and the rest of the board members, Neil White with the Oregon Pilots Association, Vice President for Legislative Affairs. And on the issue of transparency, the Aurora State Master Plan approved implementation of the extension of the runway to 6,000 feet, which extension has been approved in agreement with the Oregon applicable land use laws in 1976. That's 45 years of transparency. But addressing the issue of safety, just getting down into a tactical situation for a moment, If we take a business jet like a Falcon 2000 of maximum takeoff weight, departing Aurora on a 68-degree day requires 5,457 feet of runway. Aurora sits at 5,004. So if you do the math, there's obviously a problem there. The longer runway provides greater safety margin for people in the aircraft and people on the ground. A longer runway will allow the enhanced flight profile, enabling business aircraft to achieve their desired altitude in minimum time, thus minimizing their presence in the Wilsonville area. Thank you for your time, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Neil. And we appreciate the comment about safety and the need to get some more concrete out there.
Thank you. Next up, I have Wendy Kellington.
Thank you. I am Wendy Killington. I represent the 57% of the property owners that own the Aurora Airport. And I would like to join with all of the other speakers to ask the ODA to join with us and them, national and state organizations, to seek the Oregon Supreme Court's review to overturn the Court of Appeals decision that misconstrues, emasculates, and rewrites a state rule that was written to protect public use airports and allow them to continue to be modernized and to be made safe without years and years of land use litigation. The Court of Appeals overturned decades of LUBA precedent interpreting the rule and will apply, and that rule has been applied to situations as seemingly innocuous as relocating a road at the Eugene Airport so that operations are more safe. Opponents challenged that. LUBA applied the rule that the Court of Appeals rewrote and emasculated to say, no, there's nothing wrong under Oregon's land use system for relocating a road at an airport to serve existing airport operations. And this decision, if not overturned, will make it virtually impossible to modernize Oregon's public use airports without going through a lengthy, uncertain, and extremely expensive land use appeals process. Just ask Betty Stansberry how much money ODA has spent already in dealing with this particular case that sought to emasculate the airport planning rule. Joining with the state, national organizations, and the 57% owners of the Aurora Airport to overturn the Court of Appeals decision will not be extremely costly and will be the least costly option for ODA given the sweep and scope of the Court of Appeals decision. So we ask you join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
I've got Catherine Stevens. And then I'll Ben Williams, and then I'll circle back to you, Senator Johnson.
Chair Meeker and members of the board, I'm commenting today on potential impacts of the Court of Appeals decision for many, likely most, public use airports in the state of Oregon. The Court of Appeals decision specifically regarding OAR 660-012-00653N, if it stands, will likely have implications for airports located adjacent to agricultural, exclusive farm use lands, or any airport that needs to pursue improvements outside of an urban growth boundary. In this decision, the pertinent section of the Transportation Improvements on Rural Lands rule appears to be cast aside, a rule that's intended to protect airports. The Eugene Airport utilized this rule in the relocation of a road to be able to build the secondary parallel runway commissioned in 2005. The current appeals court decision, as written now, could have impacted that process. Final adoption of our current airport master plan into the relevant local and regional land use plans occurred in October of 2020. In this plan is an identified project to acquire about 4 acres of agricultural land within the runway 16 right runway protection zone. Once acquired, the land will be leased back to the farmer for agricultural purposes, with the security of knowing that nothing can be built which would impact the safety of our aircraft operations or people and property on the ground. The primary purpose of the RPZ is the protection of people and property on the ground. The Federal Aviation Administration requires that all land in RPZs be under the control of the airport, preferably under airport ownership. It is for this reason that the reconsideration of this decision by the Appeals Court of Oregon is important. Aviation safety and the future of airports across our state depend on this airport protection rule. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you. Next up, I have Ben Williams.
Chair Meeker and Aviation Board members, thank you for the opportunity to make public comments before you today. I would like to draw your attention to the word public in the agenda item, namely public comments. Part 1 of agenda item 5 is, quote, Aurora State Airport Master Plan Update, information presented to include grant application and FAA approved scope of work, unquote. I would point out to you that Friends of French Prairie was able to receive a copy of the draft version of the statement of work, the SOW document, presumably the version submitted to the FAA for approval, only by filing a public records request. I am not aware that there was any public notice regarding the contract and bid process for the consultant work to carry out the SOW for the master plan update. And I know of no public comment period on the SOW document itself. Those facts speak to an absence of public transparency, which is very important given that the subject being discussed is an update to the 2012 Aurora Airport Master Plan, which has been under legal dispute for almost 3 years, and about which last month the Oregon Court of Appeals issued a reverse and remand ruling back to LUBA. The contract has not been awarded and the new master plan process has not begun, yet ODA has already weighted the Public Advisory Committee in favor of the airport and aviation industry at the expense of local interests and local communities. Friends of French Prairie strongly urges you to pause the process of awarding the master plan consulting contract and starting the master planning process until the open legal matters are resolved. We do so in the hope that the process actually updates a master plan that was properly approved and that meets Oregon land use requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Senator Johnson, circling back to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to testify. For the record, my name is Betsy Johnson. I represent Senate District 16. I respectfully ask the board to direct the Department of Aviation to seek Supreme Court review of the recent Court of Appeals decision. The issue today isn't just about Aurora Airport and the matter of the master plan. Rather, it's about the mission of the department to protect airports and advocate for aviation in Oregon. The Court of Appeals opinion establishes horrible precedent, as you have heard from a number of people. I call your attention specifically to the Eugene Airport, that could threaten a number of Oregon airports with respect to safety and/or necessary growth. The opinion has national implications, as evidenced by the people who testified today. Failure to ask for Supreme Court review could, in my opinion, as both the former head of the Department of Aviation and currently as a state level policymaker, represent a complete abrogation of your responsibilities and a breach of your fiduciary duty to Oregonians. This is a very significant decision for the board, and I urge you in the strongest possible terms to direct the department to seek Supreme Court review. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. And Kathy, once we're through with public comment, I would like to adjust the schedule a little bit so that we can address this without having to keep people any longer, as to address it later in the agenda, if we can do that.
Yes, ma'am. I have no one else signed up for public testimony at this time. And it's up to the chair if you would like to then go to agenda item number 5 out of order with concurrence of the board.
If there's anybody who disagrees with that on the board, please step forward. Otherwise, we will make a quick agenda change here. Okay, hearing no objection. Just quick, there is concern out there about what this ruling does in the determination of what a larger class of aircraft is. Because there is language in OAR 660 which allows work to be done with EFU to ensure, as long as we do not bring a larger class of aircraft to the airport. We've talked about it with legal. We probably need some more discussion on that. But overall, before I say anything more, I'd like to let any board member out there have a chance to address what we've heard and discuss a little bit about what they are thinking. So Hilda, let me start with you first.
I don't have any concerns right now. I appreciate all the information that the public comment has brought to light. Certainly we'll take it into consideration.
Okay, thank you. Doug? Okay, Doug may be having some issues with his phone right now. Mark, can we go to you?
No comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. John?
I don't have any comments at this time. I do think that the impact of this decision does impact airports across the state, and I'm concerned about that as well.
Okay, Tom?
The one thing that I heard you just say is the concept of larger aircraft, the aircraft that are currently operating out of Aurora, and as far as that goes, Hillsborough, they're, and I've got two sons that are flying, one a Gulfstream 650 and the other a Global XRS. Those airplanes are all designed to basically stay just under 100,000 pounds max landing weight or max takeoff weight. The larger airplanes, such as a Boeing business jet or the Airbus, their empty weight is close to 100,000 pounds. And with weight restrictions that are put on airports, those airplanes would not even consider operating out of an airport like Aurora. So anyway, just input at this point in time on that particular point.
All right, thank you. Vince?
Sorry, I appreciate the feedback. And to me, this is a much broader issue than just Aurora. And I know there's concerns and I've heard testimony about the process, and I am not worried about the process for Aurora. There is so much more to be had on process related to the master plan. I am concerned about the larger issue. This was raised to our attention, and our Port of Portland team is looking at as well because of the impacts potentially at Hillsborough. So this is not just an Aurora issue. And it is much broader than that. And I think that's the part that we really need to consider is the impact to the entire system. And so that's my biggest concern.
Okay, and agree with you 100% that the master planning process, it's used across this country, and the process that is put out by the FAA will ensure that we have a wide-ranging discussion with a wide-ranging number of individuals affected by the airport, both close in and far out. My personal thoughts on the ruling, and I will say I am concerned that, and I'm not for sure if I have enough information to put limits around my concern, i.e. I need a little bit more from the legal community on exactly what they see as this ruling on what it does to the OAR 660 rule of larger class of aircraft. We seem to have a rather, I won't say, we have had a rather strange discussion about larger class of aircraft being not a larger airplane, but just a larger number of aircraft in a certain class. We have gone off the rails, absolutely gone off the rails. So with that, I would ask the board to entertain that we don't make a decision right now. We need to have a better understanding with legal counsel, more than a 15-minute discussion that we had today. I think we need to come back in a relatively quick manner for another executive session to allow our legal counsel to tell us what the process is for filing, or the process for becoming part of a Me Too or an amicus brief. I think we need to outline the process writ large, and then we can get into discussions of making a decision after we know more specifics on the process. Does that make sense to the board?
I agree completely with that, Martha. It's very complicated, and this is, again, I just want to reinforce, this is not just Aurora issue, and I need to understand that in more detail about what that process looks like. And there was not enough time in the executive session this morning, in my opinion.
Okay. Any other board member disagree or agree or have anything you want to add?
I agree with Vince.
I agree with Vince.
Okay, with that, I would like to give direction directly to the staff. And that is, we specifically want to have, let's give it an hour executive session. And we want to hear nothing but what the legal folks have to say about the process on what the board can and can't do. Bring nothing into this executive session except this topic. Is that clear enough?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Would you like it within the next 30 days?
Next 2 weeks, please.
Okay. Do you want to tack it on as a separate or as part of the board meeting on the August board meeting on the, what is that, the 4th?
No, let's have it separately.
Separately. Okay.
And let's make sure we have a thorough hour to get the process details out of the way, so the board understands what's at stake and what proposed actions we may take one way or the other.
Okay. In the next 2 weeks, a 1-hour executive session separate from the August board meeting. And we'll have Kathy, have the board secretary poll the members to see about availability.
All right, and we appreciate that. Any issues come up with that, if we can't do it, please double back and we'll adjust as accordingly.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Senator Johnson.
This is Senator Johnson. Would you entertain a comment based on my experience dealing with the DOJ?
Yes.
I would just like to remind the board that they are the client, and that the DOJ serves at your wishes. You are getting a new attorney who may or may not have sufficient familiarity or comfortable vocabulary with aviation. It is the board's decision to direct your attorney, not to allow your attorney to direct you. So I have appreciated your heavy emphasis on process details. But in my opinion, this is ultimately a decision of the board to direct your DOJ attorney to act on the board's request for how to proceed, not DOJ.
Thoroughly understand, Senator, thoroughly understand. The board just simply had more questions today than we could get answered. And as such, we asked specifically if we were under any time crunch, and we were reported that there wasn't. So we wanted to take a little bit more of a thorough exam on options the board could pursue.
Thank you. I appreciate that completely. I just wanted to comment that sometimes DOJ becomes the tail that wags the dog. You're the client.
Totally understand.
Thank you.
Okay, wrapping up this discussion, I'd like to go out and open up to the board and the ODA staff again, if there's any follow-up additional comments to be made. Okay, with that, then I will close out that discussion and we'll go into Betty's director's update.
Okay. Chair Meeker, did you want to change the order and do item number 5, or do you want me to just go ahead and do item number 4? The item 4 is the director's update. It won't take 5 minutes or so.
No, go ahead with the update. We'll stay with the order.
Okay. All right, I'm going to attempt again. Tish. Yes. Okay. Share screen too. Share. Okay. Are you able to see a screen that says director's update?
We are.
All right. So I will be brief because we're running a little bit longer than what we thought we would this morning. So I'm just going to give you a recap of the legislative session and then talk to you a little bit just about grants and some current issues. So the legislative session that just ended, it was a 5-month session. There were about 4,000 legislative concepts brought forward that resulted in 2,400 bills. Of those, 683 passed, which gave us a pass rate of 28% and a mortality rate of 72%. For the 5 bills that were ODA requested, we had 100% pass. And the most important one of those is House Bill 2434, which was the elimination of the sunset. I will go into a little bit more detail here in a moment, but I would be remiss if I did not point out and specifically thank, while we had many individuals and airports that testified on behalf of the elimination of the sunset, I want to pay particular interest and recognition of the work that the Oregon Pilots Association, Oregon Airport Managers Association, and Oregon Aviation Industries played in helping us get this legislation across the finish line. So my thanks to all of those that helped us get this. This was a long time coming. The other 4 bills that we had was our budget bill, some capital projects, obstruction fees, and then the omnibus bill. I want to take just a moment to talk a little bit about the strange and winding path that the sunset took, just because it was such an extraordinary path that it took. So at the beginning of the session, the sunset was in 2 bills, a standalone bill, which the department had requested, and then as part of a joint package that the Joint Transportation Committee had put together. And as you know, 6 years ago, the legislature increased the aviation fuel tax by 2 cents, but with a sunset date of January of 22. And of those, that 2 cent increase, virtually all of it goes back out to airports as grants. So it started out as 2 separate versions. The committee felt that it would have a better chance of success if it was blended into the omnibus bill. And so that was the bill that advanced through the committee. That bill took on a life of its own, and it took almost 5 months of amendments and rewrites and rehearings before it finally went for a vote. And about 3 weeks before the end of the legislative session, the leadership of the committee decided that the aviation portion would do better on its own as a standalone, which is what we had wanted all along. So they separated it out into 2 different bills, and our sunset became 2434. So on its first vote on the floor, it did exceptionally well. We got 56, I believe 56 out of the 59 votes were in favor of it. Very, very strong support in the House. And then when it was going back over to the Senate for a vote, it was detoured to a Senate committee that tacked on a unrelated timber tax bill that also needed a 3/5 vote. Then when it went to the Senate floor for a vote, it squeaked by. We needed 18 votes, we got 19. And then because the Senate had changed the bill, it had to go back to the House for a vote, for a revote. And when it went back to the House declined. And then sent it back to a conference committee who stripped out the timber tax portion and sent it back to the Senate floor. And then the day before the legislature adjourned, Friday at 5 o'clock, after 20 long, painful minutes of floor debate, we got it passed. It wasn't pretty, but we got it across the finish line. So what it did for us is, in addition to eliminating the sunset, It shuts down the ROAR program and transfers those funds into the core program. It allows the board to set the priorities by administrative rule. It allows us to increase the maximum number of years for leases on certain leases on our airports to 50 years, and it reduced, we were doing reporting twice a year, and it just reduced it down to 1. So it was a long, windy path, but thank you to everyone who assisted, and we got it across the finish line. So our other bills, our budget bill, and I wanted to highlight this one just because of the challenges it creates for our agency. You know, we do not receive state funding, either general fund or lottery funds. We operate off of the aviation fuel tax. Of that, 3 cents, 2 cents goes into a grant program, 1 cent goes for operation of the agency. The 2-year budget that started just a couple of weeks ago, that was approved by the legislature, is a 27% reduction from our previous budget, including a 10% reduction or $514,000 in the operating budget, a 25% reduction in our pavement management program, which is $583,000, 100% reduction in capital projects, which are any projects that are over $1 million, but we were able to add one project back in a separate bill. It results in a 20% reduction in staff. There is no funding given to us for cost of living adjustments or inflation or for legal expenses. So this is to say this is a challenging budget would be an understatement. We are not, as a state agency, we are not allowed to deficit spend. We can only spend to the revenues that are projected for the agency and to the limitation that the legislature gives us. So this will be a challenging budget for us to work with for the next 2 years. My intentions are, if the revenues come back to what they were to pre-pandemic levels and they're sustained at that, then going back to the emergency board, possibly as early as December, and asking to restore the limitation. But that is an if the revenues return and if they remain stable and if the legislature will allow us to have the limitation back. Until that happens, oh, sorry, sure, Martha.
I understand that in the budget, we've had some decreases. On the flip side, we've got tremendous amount of money from the Federal Aviation Department that has allowed us to do things. They've kept us flush.
Correct.
I understand it's in different pots. Why can we not go forward to the legislation now and try to rectify our budget? Either ask that we get above 5% off the core funding. What is the art of possible? I guess I don't understand. I just can't believe that there's no path forward to asking the legislature now. All they can do is say no, and it doesn't hurt us, but let's fix this budget so that we can have the money we need to do things right. And I would like to know the art of the possible. More than happy to help you draw up whatever PowerPoint or research, whatever. I mean, the board can help you on this if you're short-staffed. But we would really like to know the art of the possible on reattacking our budget so that we can have the money to do the things we need to do.
Okay, so just in a nutshell, the process for going before the e-board to increase our limitation, because again, we can only, because we're not general funded, we only have to match our expenses to the revenues, and our primary revenue source is the aviation fuel tax. So going back to e-board as a temporary fix to increase our limitations once we see the revenues return is a Band-Aid short-term fix. The long-term fix is to go to the legislature and ask for general funding so that we are not so dependent upon this single source of revenue, especially when it has these extreme fluctuations that we've seen over the past 16 months. The way we were able to survive the past 16 months with roughly a 50% decline in the revenues was that federal aid. Altogether, it's about $1 million. And then we were able to get legislative approval to pull money out of the grant program. That was about $975,000. That's the Band-Aid that got us through the past 16 months of revenue decline.
And Betty, I don't want to extend this out. We've already, I know there's people waiting for the master plan discussion.
Okay.
How about if I get with you offline, and I would just like a thorough investigation of things we can do. And then we'll get to a preferred path. But before we outline a preferred path, I'd like to know everything, that all avenues to attack to rectify the budget that we're currently in.
Madam Chair, would you recognize me? This is Senator Johnson.
Please go ahead, Senator Johnson.
I still remain one of the three tri-chairs of the Ways and Means system. And if you have that offline conversation with Ms. Stansbury, I would welcome being included. There may be leftover ARPA money. This is the American Rescue Plan money. There could be an ask orchestrated to the E-Board. It will take some political lobbying to get permission from the two E-Board chairs, President Courtney and Speaker Kotek. But I would very much like to be included in that so that we can have a comprehensive conversation about color of money. There's bonding money, there is general fund, there is ARPA, there may be an infrastructure package from the feds. And I think part of our charge at the Department of Aviation is getting projects lined up with the color of that money. And I offer to be helpful in that discussion.
That would be greatly appreciated, and please consider you're part of our group here, and we will contact you shortly on when we can get together.
Thank you. I'm going to excuse myself, and thank you for your extreme courtesy in allowing me to butt in a couple of times.
Thank you, Senator Johnson.
Okay, so moving on quickly, in our budget, all capital projects were eliminated, but we were able to put one project back in via 5506, and that's the Siletz Bay, Glendon Beach, the runway and electrical rehab. We've already received federal funding at 100% for the design work, and then we would be looking to do construction, not this year, but next summer. Okay. Obstruction evaluations, we're required by state statute to perform them without compensation. Senate Bill 38 allows us to do a cost recovery. For those, we do about $1,100 a year. Our cost to do that is roughly $100,000 a year. So this bill allowed us to recover that cost. We will be determining the fee by administrative rule later on this summer and fall. And airport, FAA, and weather service equipment will be exempted from it. And if ODO, or Oregon Department of Energy, pays us a small amount of money on an on-demand basis to do consultation with them, so we won't double dip if a structure is if we're being paid by ODO to evaluate a structure. Then the last one, House Bill 3055, which is where the fuel tax sunset resided for almost 5 months. It ended up being this massive bill, 136 sections, 24 amendments. It was mostly surface transportation. The only aviation pieces that were in it was the Medford Airport vending machine technical correction and Port of Portland's terminal weapons ban, which was stripped out and put into a different bill. And 3055 ultimately passed the last day of session. The last bill that I want to just bring to your attention is House Bill 2021, which passed because it has a potential impact on aviation. It calls for a 100% reduction in greenhouse emissions for electricity sold in Oregon within basically the next 20 years. So as they become more reliant on clean and sustainable energy sources, such as wind and solar, we have an abundance of those resources in concentrated areas in Oregon. And as those, the resources to capture that energy involve tall structures, it has the potential for conflict with Oregon's airports. And again, our underlying goal will be to find a balance between the need for clean energy production while still protecting navigable airspace. So, finally, good news, round 4, where we've got 2.5 months left in the federal fiscal year. The FAA on July 1st announced their 4th round of grants in 3 Oregon airports. We're fortunate to get 100% funding on some pavement repairs to the total of $18.5 million. Hermiston, Hillsborough, and Tillamook all got grants to do pavement and lighting. You mentioned earlier about ARPA, some of the federal funding. Oregon's airports ended up getting 95.5 million. And consistent with the previous federal funding assistance of the CARES Act and CRISA, 97% of the funds are going to the 5 commercial service airports, 3% to general aviation airports. And of the general aviation airports, the state-owned airports are going to get about 428,000. And these can be used for operating expenses. And in a little bit, a few minutes later in this meeting, I'm going to ask you for approval to accept and expend the ARPA funds for the state-owned airports. Here you see a listing of the funds that we're receiving. And I won't go any further on that. But one last issue I wanted to bring forward to you that is a current issue that has been emerging in the past few weeks with the wildfires that are going on in Oregon and the aerial assets that are being used to fight the fires. An issue has arisen with the availability of jet fuel. Most of the aircraft that are fighting the fires use Jet A. It's not so much an issue with product availability as it is with delivery. There is sufficient Jet A available. It's the issue is getting it to Oregon and to Oregon's airports. We have multiple airports throughout the state that are supporting fire suppression activities right now. For the state-owned ones, as of yesterday, we had 2 of our airports that were providing support. Chiloquin is both air and ground, and Tokenie is a ground only. But we're hearing from several airports that with the increased demand, even before the increased demand related to the fire suppression, difficulty with getting Jet A. Delivery times are sometimes running up to 2 to 3 weeks to be able to get it. And it is, again, an issue of the delivery of the drivers being available to get the fuel there. So we are working with Department of Energy to try to resolve spot fires as they come up. Last week, there was an issue out at La Grande where we were able to get some temporary fuel from Pendleton. Earlier this week, it was an issue at Lakeview, which Klamath Falls was kind enough to be able to backfill some fuel until they can get a delivery. But this is becoming an issue, and this has got the governor's attention because of the need for aerial support for for fighting these fires. So I just wanted you to be aware that this has become an issue, not just for Oregon. Other Western states are finding the same issue, is just getting the fuel to where it needs to be. So that concludes my remarks for the director's report. Are there any questions from board members?
No questions for me. Just doubling back to Senator Johnson's. Vince, could I get you in on, since it's a budgeting kind of thing and it goes to the heart of ODA being able to continue on smartly, can I get you to join with Senator Johnson, myself, and Betty in on that conversation?
Sure, happy to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay, so that concludes my report. And so it's now coming up on 12 o'clock. Would you like to take a short break or do you want to continue on?
Let's drive.
Okay, so next up we have the Aurora Airport Master Plan update, and Heather is going to present that to you.
Okay, just a quick second.
And Heather, if you could turn your camera on, please.
Sure. Okay. Do you see Aurora State Airport Master Plan Scope of Work Overview?
No,
you do not.
No.
You don't. Okay. Let's see. How about now? No?
Nope. No.
That's not good. Not now either, huh? Shoot, hold on. Yes, I'm trying to figure out why it's not.
Heather, do you want me to get that on the screen? I'll just get.
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out why it's not sharing.
I think you need to hover over that. Kathy, do you want me to bring it up, or can you?
I've got it.
I know. I'm so sorry. Okay.
Okay. Let me get my screen share going. Oops.
Sorry for the delay. And this is an update for the board on the Aurora State Master Plan for contract purposes.
There we go. All right, got it? Can you all see?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Next slide, Kathy. So the overview in the slide deck is about the upcoming master plan process and the contract that we will be hopefully entering into with Century West. The components, the schedule, public involvement program, FAA involvement, state agency coordination, NEPA and planning, and work order contract information, and key team members. The purpose of a master plan, I went ahead and just put it in the slide so you can all have it for later. Airports are transportation facilities that undergo periodic planning. Aurora Airport is a transportation facility, and the FAA master plans are what are used to map out the next 10 to 20 years of those facilities. All master plans differentiate from federal, state, or regional wide planning efforts. And airport master plans are a comprehensive study of an individual airport for short, medium, and long-range planning. They go over design standards, future aviation demand, in a safe and sustainable and cost-effective manner. Airport master plans are driven by the FAA, and the scope of work is also driven by the FAA. The tasks, the work product must adhere to very specific FAA guidance and standards. Modifications to any of those FAA standards have to be approved by the FAA Airport District Office and also FAA headquarters in DC. Once that scope of work has been approved, then a grant is issued. Master plans typically have a shelf life of 10 to 20 years, and then we're usually required to do a new master plan, which is where we're at. Past planning efforts at Aurora include the 1976 plan, 2000, and the 2012 plan. While these documents will be referenced for their historical value, the new master plan will be fresh. All project data will be fresh, the components will be fresh, as outlined in the FAA advisory circulars. Of particular note, the aircraft control tower will provide more accurate aircraft operations and fleet mix data than was available for any of the other prior master plans. We also did a constrained operations justification study in 2019 that we'll be taking a look at, and then the local comprehensive transportation system plan and utility plans to incorporate from Marion County.
Hey, Heather.
Yes.
Have we got the constrained operations plan back from the FAA?
That's a good question. Can I put that on my list to get back to you with?
You can, and if they haven't, then I would personally like to be on a phone call with you to the FAA to understand why the heck we haven't got anything back in 24 months.
Okay, will do. So these are master plan components, and I put this slide in there because all master plans go through the same components: the forecasts, the inventory forecasts, facility requirements, alternatives, airport layout plan. And they all have the same scope of work standards. Next slide. The Aurora State Airport Master Plan components are no different than those, except they'll go into detail of the Aurora State Airport facility. The inventory will include the airport-specific geographical information system survey, forecasts and aviation activity forecasts as included in the scope of work that you all got as a part of this package. It was like 34 pages, but all of these tasks go into there. Facility goals and requirements, task 6, airport facility development alternatives, implementation plan, which is the capital improvement plan and financing plans, the drawings, and so forth. Next slide. The Aurora State Master Plan components are laid out in this slide. Working paper number 1. All of these 3 working papers will be delivered to the FAA for comment. Included in the number 1 working paper will be an introduction, the inventory and existing conditions analysis, and aviation activity forecasts. The second one will be facility requirements, development alternatives. And the last working paper will be the implementation plan, strategies and actions, and the financial plan, the ALP drawing set, and the solid waste and recycling plan. As you may be aware, the FAA does sign off on the ALP drawing set. Next slide. Here is the proposed schedule, and it does take us out into 2023. We're estimating approximately 24 months to completion, depending on when we get started. It could run longer, it could run shorter, but generally all master plans take about the same amount of time, no matter their complexity. They generally do. The public involvement program of this is comprised of the advisory committee meetings, which are always open to the public as well. And that is where the Planning Advisory Committee meets. The PAC is called. We'll have 7 meetings and up to 2 more if necessary. We may also institute a citizen advisory committee if there is need. There are scheduled 4 public information open houses, addition to these 7 scheduled meetings. 4 open houses total, 2 will be in person and 2 virtual. There will be stakeholder meetings scheduled as needed, but only if the CAC is developed. And we will have a public informational awareness campaign, a website, a project website, along with all meeting information and working papers will be posted throughout the project. To date, yes.
Quick question on that open input sessions.
Mm-hmm.
The practices that we have for that process, do they reflect best practices across the country?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
It will also be led by a facilitator, JLA, and we'll make sure that it will be in, so the FAA has laid out processes as well that we incorporate within the master planning. The Planning Advisory Committee to date is on this list, and this is just to date. There is some TBD names. There are obviously businesses on and around the airport because they need the airport as a transportation facility to survive. Marion County Planning, because that is the governing jurisdiction. We do have a board member, the Farm Bureau, the Governor's Office, Wilsonville Chamber of Commerce, City of Wilsonville, Clackamas County, City of Canby, and Aurora. Next slide. There have been citizen groups requesting to participate, and I wanted to make sure you had a slide of this. Charbonneau, Deer Creek Estates, Prairie View Estates, Aurora Butteville Barlow, CPO, 1000 Friends, Friends of French Prairie, Seismic Wildfire Emergency Management, and Local Farmers Representative. Next slide. The FAA involvement in a master plan consists of the 3 sections in those working papers, and that is review of forecasts and approval of those forecasts, the selection of the critical aircraft, and the airport layout plan. From these elements, the FAA makes the determination regarding all eligibility of funding through the AIP plan for capital improvement projects. Approval of the items does not constitute approval for design and construction of those projects. Federally funded projects must also undergo additional National Environmental Policy Act review at the time of the project. Once FAA approves the final master plan ALP, then the ODA board may approve with staff recommendations. Next slide. The state agency coordination, which is a agreement or a program that we have and all state agencies have to make sure that any program or project that we're doing complies with ODA's with the land use compliance and statewide planning goals in an acknowledged manner compatible. So DLCD has approved our plan. Our draft plans are distributed to all parties of record who identify any conflicts to ensure proper coordination with all local comp plans and with the governing jurisdiction. And per Department of Land Conservation and Development and the statutes, we will get comment back from DLCD regarding what we submit to them. The Aurora State Airport Master Plan will be in accordance with all statutes and rules accordingly. This is important to know. This is the NEPA process of master planning, and I really wanted to focus for just a second on this. I did do a NEPA 101 not too long ago. And yes, good planning is the foundation for project justification for a purpose and need statement, but it needs to be noted that a NEPA or environmental action is not part of a master plan, just the purpose and need statements of the projects. There is no environmental component to a master plan except an overview to inform the development of NEPA's scope for projects that come out of a master plan. The purpose and need statement is key, though, to successful environmental analysis of those projects later on. It establishes the reason why a project is being proposed. It clearly describes the proposed action in a well-defined and concise statement. And regardless of NEPA review level, whether it's a CADX, environmental assessment, the FAA will not approve funding if the purpose and need statement is weak or lacking proper justification. You're muted.
Just to make sure everyone in the audience understands, is that's not saying we're not going to do environmental assessment. It's not part of the master plan. The master plan closes, then we go to environmental assessment. So we will get to environmental.
We will on any.
It's a different step. That's all. I just want to make sure that the audience realizes what we just said there. We will do environmental.
We will on all of the projects that are listed within the CIP, that is the outcome, and to what level those projects get a NEPA review, whether it's a categorical exclusion or a full environmental assessment, right? If it's a runway extension or if it's an electrical project, right? They all have some level of environmental.
And Heather, this is Vince, just to confirm. So when we do get to the statement of need, and you talk here about the strong data and forecast, right? You're going to do this as part of the master plan. But when the time comes to actually do the project, you update those things again, correct?
We do. We do an additional, what's called justification prior to the project because it's required. And then the NEPA starts, and then you have all of the components of a NEPA, which is public involvement and public input. That's the first part of that project.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Next slide. And just like Vince mentioned, to ensure any proposed project is NEPA review ready, the planning team will address several items: the inventory of the environmental categories early on in the process, review of potential environmental impacts, anticipated environmental review efforts that will be built into the CIP, strong public involvement program, and then biweekly coordination meetings with the FAA, as the FAA is the lead agency for all NEPA. So getting to the contract information, this was procured almost 5 years ago for all planning projects related to 4 of our airports. We have 12 NIPIAS airports, and we do agreement to agrees in blocks of 4 for planning projects and then engineering projects separately. This was one of them. It was procured by all federal processes and state processes. And in the planning contracts is Century West Engineering, and they will be retained as the prime for this. In that team, we will be including JLA for public involvement. David Evans and Associates will do any environmental inventory, as well as a brief for potential impacts from development alternatives. And just so you know, the budget to note for this work order contract is a little over $971,000. The key project team members, of course, Betty is the project sponsor, myself as the project manager. Sarah Lucas will be coordinating all aviation planning. Seth Thompson will be coordinating land use with Marion County, and then Century West, Matt Rogers, David Miller, and James Kirby. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Heather. And for the board today, I don't think we have to take a specific motion, but we do need a consensus. We talked before about pausing until we got the court appeals ruling. In my mind, we're going to do a master plan no matter what. It's time to do it. The Court of Appeals ruling has no effect at all on what we're doing for master planning in my mind, but I would be interested to hear if there's anybody else out there that feels differently.
This is Vince. I don't feel differently. I think we need to go. There is sooner rather than later, there will be plenty of opportunity for the public input. I guess I do have a question if I can ask.
Go ahead.
So I know there's lots of questions about the PAC versus the folks that are on it versus that are not. All PAC meetings are held in public, correct?
Yes.
So whether you're on the committee or not, you still attend every meeting that the PAC can attend, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
And even if we had to have a citizens advisory committee, that will be public as well. Every meeting will be open, transparent, and public.
Thank you.
Okay, any other board member? Is there any board member against going forward? Okay, so with the consensus that I would say let's go forward and let's get the contract signed and let's get executing.
Okay, thank you, Chairmaker.
Okay, Betty, over to you for the ARPA funds. We're always ready to take money from the federal government.
Okay. Kathy, can you bring up there's just a single slide that shows the amounts we're getting for each individual airport again. This is probably the last round of federal assistance that we're going to get that's related to the pandemic. You know, the first one's ARPA, then CRISA, and now, excuse me, CARES, then CRISA, and now ARPA. It's a total of $428,000. Kathy, are you able to bring up that slide for number 7?
Yes, working on it.
Okay, so while she's working on that, so this is money that can be used for operating expense, and that's the intention of this fund, is to help backfill some of the lost revenue from the decline in the aviation fuel tax related to the pandemic. So we will be using these funds for operating expenses. And so what we're asking you is for permission to accept and expend the ARPA grant funds for the 11 airports. That if we can get the slide deck up, there we go. Okay. So the action in front of the board today is permission for Department of Aviation to accept and expend the ARPA funds. Are there any questions?
With that, any questions from the board or any discussion from the board? Do I have a motion to accept the American Rescue Plan Act grants as outlined by the ODA staff?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion by John. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Hilda. All those in favor of accepting the American Rescue Plan grants as outlined, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say nay. Hearing none, let it know that the board has recommended or has agreed to accept the American Rescue Plan Act grants as presented by ODA.
Madam Chair, point of clarification.
Go ahead.
Would the motion could amend to also approve expenditure of those funds?
Oh, so we need to accept and expend. I am
Absolutely.
Let me apologize. Let me restate. Do I have a motion to accept the American Rescue Plan grants and to expend them as well?
Yes, I make that motion.
Motion by John. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Hilda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Hearing that, motion has been accepted.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Chair, for the folks who have the original agenda, I would like to point out that the item number 6 for the PMP, which is the Pavement Management Program Policy Update, will be moved to the August 5th, 2021 meeting. Is that the understanding, Chair Meeker?
Okay, that sounds great.
All right, thank you. So we didn't skip it, we just moved it.
All right. Well, getting to other business, it seems to be that, our unmanned aviation professionals in Oregon are a hot commodity in Washington because they seem to keep going there. So Mark has been hired and is actually going right across the border. Is that right, Mark?
I am. I'll be at Pacific Northwest National Labs.
Well, fantastic. It just shows you the quality of folks we have here leading the unmanned aerial systems programs that we got. We are going to miss you. But that does lead the board. Because we're running late, I would like to postpone the discussion to August, but we need to think about, do we want to continue to seek out unmanned aerial expertise as for our next board member? We need to outline the criteria that we want to give ODA in our board member search. So with that, Betty, can we wait a month before we open up the search?
Sure. We're
Okay.
actually meeting again in a couple of weeks, so.
Oh, we can talk. Well, that's an executive session. We can't talk about this in
No,
executive.
August 5th. August 5th is the next board meeting.
Oh, that's right.
So we're going to be meeting you again in a couple of weeks, so we can certainly discuss it then.
Okay, so we'll kind of, so if the board members would, please think about what we may be lacking going forward for the next, 8 to 10 years and some experience that you think we may have. Mark is our only UAS expert, fantastic asset and really has led us through some interesting discussions over the last years, and we appreciate you for your service. With that, Mark, I hope you stay in touch. We hear from Brian every so often, so drop us a line or two.
Yes,
right.
if Brian could share what is actually going on up there, it would be very interesting for all of us.
Yeah, it's some exciting times, isn't it? Holy cow. Okay.
Madam Chair, just a point that if folks are interested, the governor's office has already started the process of declaring this seat vacant. And so if people are interested, they can go to the website and the application materials are there.
Super. And also, I'll also drop the governor's rep a note saying we're going to kind of hold for 30 days so the board can have some kind of formal guidance to the selection committee. Okay. Well, apparently my dogs have found something to bark at. Anyways, Betty, you got anything to recap the session for today?
No, I think we're done. Thank you for everyone taking the time to meet with us today. It was a lengthy meeting, but I think it was worthwhile to hear the different perspectives.
Okay. Kathy, do you need anything from the board going forward?
No, I've got a list of the items that the board has directed for staff convening an executive session in the next 2 weeks, scheduling the meeting with Senator Johnson, Chair Meeker, Vince Coronado, and Betty Stansbury on funding, and then to follow up on the constrained operations study. Those are the 3 IOUs I have. And for the August 5th meeting, which will be our next regularly scheduled board meeting, which will occur via Zoom, I have for agenda input, moving the PMP policy update to that date. And the UAS update also will be scheduled then. So Mark, you'll just have to tune in and listen in anyway. And it's been a pleasure working with you, sir. That's all I have, Chair Meeker.
Okay, great. John, you're a board member there to the Aurora Master Plan. Could you do me a favor? Maybe work a little bit with the ODA staff, and if you want some other board members to help you out, it would be nice just knowing more about the Aurora and way forward. Working with all the questions that have been asked from the city of Wilsonville and the city of Aurora. Annexation. What can we do for governance? It would be nice just to have all the issues kind of lined out for the board at some future meeting. So we can kind of talk about the long term, not long term, but the broader overarching governance thoughts, what we can do, what we can't do, just to get the board members smart on process of what goes on with airport management, different methods for airport management, those kind of things. Would it be possible? I know you're already kind of tasked with the master planning, but just something to open up a discussion and to get on paper all the concerns so the board can see the art of the possible.
I will do what I can to work with Director Stansbury. I am short-staffed myself, and so I'm going to be a little behind the power curve, but I will do my best.
Okay.
Try to get something to you soon.
And the board's ready to give you whatever help you need. And it's just like I said, just flushing out the cans and can'ts.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I'll do that.
All right, thanks. Okay, with that, any other board member got anything else they would like to add? Okay, with that, then let me go ahead and this is my healers. They're saying the time of the board member is she wants to go out for a walk. So with that, I'm going to close the board and thank you for your participation, and I'll talk to you all in executive session in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Martha?
Yes, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, what are all those ribbons